We celebrated two holidays in the past week and a half. One's official, one is unofficial. And I'm curious if anybody knows what the unofficial holiday is that we've passed.
Their goals.
It's called Quitter's Day. Okay. And I just want to know how many of you have already celebrated this by quitting on your New Year's resolutions. It's funny. So the resolution relapse. Okay. If we look at history, it's interesting to see how quickly people fall back on the resolutions that they set at the beginning of the year. And they actually, Strava, how many of you actually use that to track fitness in some sort? So it's a tracking platform, and they have over 800 million users that they track. And so they've been able to kind of fine tune and figure out when do most people give up on their previously set goals, because health is actually one of the most commonly set targets that people set at the beginning of the year. And 800 million users, most likely day to quit was January 17th to 19th, somewhere in that little ballpark. Yeah, so just over 2 weeks. That's a long commitment, right? And it's interesting. Only 9% of people, and Hunter, we actually refreshed the slides. So 43% of people are likely to quit their commitment by the end of January. So not even a full month commitment. And if we look at, and they've actually coined it as Quitter's Day, is the unofficial holiday. Now, here's actually a little slide from Forbes, and it just shows, based on a wide variety of people that they surveyed, how long they stay committed to their commitments. And only 6 to 9% end up actually staying committed to their New Year's resolution. Now, I just want you to think again, what boat am I in? And also, what boat do I want to be in 6 months down the road, 12 months down the road? And I think that, and more important than setting a resolution, is actually making a true commitment. And I think that there's a difference between the two. So today we're going to have a conversation around the right mindset. As we've talked about, 80% of success comes down to your mindset, your philosophy. Only 20% comes down to mechanics, right? The strategy. And we'll talk about some strategy as well, some specific models, some action steps you can take to get into business this year. But we first want to make sure that the mindset is right. And so I actually came across Kimber's post earlier this morning. She is the regional tech trainer for KW in Utah. Has anybody read this yet? Seen this post? Okay, a few of you. So I actually thought it was really well written and interesting, so I'm going to read it. So marathons always seem to be the same, or start the same. High energy, high excitement. The pack is thick, and you are dodging people constantly. It seems like the road in front of you will never be clear, and you can barely spot the pacer that's going to get you where you want to end up at the time you want to end up there. And yet, just as reliable as the chaos at the front, there will surely be a point in the race where you look around and see the other runners around you begin to wane. You start to see the doubt in people's face. Many begin that walk-run combo, and you start seeing more frequent stops at aid stations. It's then I always know there's a choice to make. I could let the runner doing the run-walk combo give me permission to take it easy, and oh, how tempting it is at 18 miles in. Or is that the time I further distance myself from the pack? Is that the time I push past where most have gone? Or even better, where most people thought I'd never be able to get to? It's separation season, friends. And whatever you're pushing to achieve, keep going, keep pushing, and be ready and willing to leave what isn't keeping up behind. Remember, the critics rarely make it to mile 22. Next right thing is blinders on. And I think this is, there's a reality to this, especially in business, is that we make some commitments, we set some goals, some targets for our real estate business. And very often we've talked about this idea that every goal that you set, doesn't matter if it's life, business, there's always a price to be paid, always. And what you have to do is not negotiate. You have to say, I'm willing to pay the price or not, right? And make that commitment. And there's this idea that there's a big difference between being interested and being committed when it comes to a goal. And that's the question to ask yourself, and just say, am I actually interested in achieving this? Would it be nice when it's convenient to achieve? Or am I truly committed to do whatever it takes? Okay, the difference between being interested and committed is when you're interested, you'll do what's convenient. When you are truly committed, you'll do whatever it takes. And we go to this old story. Who remembers listening to the story as a kid, right? And the tortoise and the hare, you understand that we are playing the long game, especially in business. There's, of course, some times where you have to do some short sprints, but the reality is it's the people who stay committed over a long period of time that end up winning. And so you have to adopt that philosophy and be committed to the long game as we approach this year. There's a lot of great shifts that are happening right now. Like this is probably, I would say in the last like 16-ish months, probably the best outlook we've had in the real estate market, especially with rates making the shift. Obviously, the presidential elections kind of helped the real estate market in some ways too. We know that. So we're in a really good position. And I know Gary's going to go through some vision, some perspective around what's to come the next 12 to 18 months at Family Reunion. But the reality is there's a lot of ways to win in this market in this year. And so we've got to take advantage of that. So last thought before we get into some specific models is commitment can be your strategic advantage. Okay. So if you were to say, what is the principle or the philosophy that can help me to capture the edge in this market, in business, it's the level of commitment. Okay. And if you were to put it just on a scale, just ask yourself when looking at your specific goals, how committed am I to making this happen? Is it a level 1? Is it a level 5? Is it a level 10? Where does my commitment lie? And that might be a good process or exercise to go through for each of the targets that you've set, right? Whether it be your health, your relationship targets, your business, whatever it may be, kind of or ask yourself how committed you are to each of those targets. And then again, ask yourself, are you interested or committed? So I think it comes down to really focusing on playing the long game, on staying what I'd call gritty, staying determined. And it really comes down to some of these words: resilience, having an unwavering commitment, committing to the passionate pursuit, having consistent effort over time, and being focused and disciplined. Like those very simple ingredients, I promise will bring the success that you want in this year. So before we get into some real estate models, some specific strategy, any thoughts on this, or how have you seen this show up in your life? Does this idea make sense? Or no?
So last year, my daughter agreed to do a triathlon with me, and so it was her first time to do a triathlon. And we were actually signed up to do one on March 25th. And I don't know if you guys remember, but we had really bad weather back then. And so they actually gave people the option to push it out if they didn't feel safe in that weather. But my mother was in the process of dying and died on March 29th. With all of that in place, we decided to push ours out until May. And it was really difficult for me dealing with the funeral and everything I needed to take to try to stay up with my training for the triathlon. But I just did what I could, and we still did the triathlon. And it was difficult for me. I wasn't really at it was the least I'd been trained for any of the triathlons that I'd done. And it was difficult, but I just kept doing a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. And eventually, guess what? That means I finished and came over the finish line. And there was a point in there when it was just hard, and especially going up the hills. And I just said, you know what? It doesn't matter. Even if I was the very last one to finish, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to keep going. And I did, and I had family there to cheer me on and everything. And it turns out, and I thought of it even in my mind, I'm like, well, after all, somebody has to be last. And if they are, you take one for the team. Turns out I was the last person to finish in this triathlon. But you know what? Other people were behind me, and I knew that. They didn't finish. And even though it was really hard, and even though it was the most difficult triathlon that I've ever done, I still felt awesome when I finished that. And my family all cheered me. None of them said, "Geez, Mom, couldn't you have gone any faster?"
Hmm.
So there you go.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. One thing I'll highlight with this, there is power in staying committed to something that you promised yourself you were going to do. It is it's the slight edge in life and business is just staying committed to something you told yourself you were going to do. Because the reality is we often won't let somebody else down. Like, hey, I'm going to meet you here for this appointment at this time. Usually you're going to show up for that appointment with somebody else. But how many times do you set maybe something on your calendar for Saturday of I'm going to do my weekly planning on Saturday and you miss that appointment with yourself, right? Or just the small things that stack up over time and build that self-trust and self-confidence. There's a podcast I was listening to recently, Jesse Itzler. It's Sarah Blakely's husband. And she's the one that created Spanx. Very impactful businesswoman, the first female billionaire in that space. And he's also massively successful. He created Marquis Jets, sold that to Warren Buffett, and can't remember the specific water brand. It's one that all of you know that he also had his hand on. But he has some really good content. And one of the things that he talked about, he was somebody who does marathons and runs quite often. And he had this commitment that he wanted to make of running this ultra marathon 100-mile race. And it's called the Last Man Standing. Essentially what they have you do is run 4.5 miles roughly. You have 50 minutes to complete it. And the faster you do it in, the more time you get to rest. And what they do is they just have you run that 4.5-mile loop. And once you rest and they say, okay, it's time to start again, they just keep doing that to see who lasts the longest. And it lasts for days. And so he said, well, I need to be somewhere between like 100 miles to 130 to be able to win this. And so what he did is he actually brought in a Marine to come stay with him for a few days at his home and help train him. And also the Marine committed to running a race with him. And it's funny, one of the things that he talks about in this podcast episode is that it was very odd the first couple of days with that Marine because all he would do is sit in the corner. He's like, I'm just going to observe your lifestyle for the first couple of days. And he would just sit there and look at Jesse and he would just laugh hysterically. And he's playing mind games with him. And Jesse's wife was like, pulled him aside. Where did you find this guy? And he's like, well, I found him on the internet. And but one of the things that he said is like, hey, tomorrow we're going to start training at this time in the morning, 4:40 or 5 a.m. Meet me at 4:45 and we'll go through the game plan. And what he said was anytime that you feel like the furthest limit that Jesse was getting at that point was about 38 miles, okay, on his own training. And he said, anytime that you want to stop, what you're going to say to yourself is, I will not quit. I will not quit. And he expressed to him how the words that we tell ourselves have power. And the other thing that started happening is once they got to that stage where Jesse had to start reciting that self to him, and he'd have him say it out loud. What he had him do as well is have this other saying is that I never get tired. I never get tired. And so during the actual race, when they would go to the aid station, he said they were about 70 miles in at this point. And the Marine was like, you need to go to the aid station and tell her who you are and that you do not get tired. And Jesse said that he, 70 miles in, went up to this nurse at the aid station and said that. And she just looked at him like, maybe he's delusional. Is he crazy? Like, what is he talking about? Long story short, is he went over 100 miles running this race. And he just drives home how powerful the beliefs that we program. And you can't negotiate with yourself. So when things get hard and we have that little thought that comes in and says, I'm going to take it easy today. It's snowing. I don't want to go running outside, right? That's when things start to fall off track, is if you accept those negotiations in your mind, okay? So think about it with any of your business goals that you have, your life goals, your health goals. Just have some empowering beliefs that you're going to start programming that are going to help you to continue to push forward. Those are some easy ones that you can use if you don't have any, which is I will not quit, and I never get tired if you have a health goal. That's a good one too. So that's the mindset framework. Now let's get into some specific real estate models that work. And with these models come the same kind of foundational principle we've been talking about, which is that it's the consistency over time that actually makes it work. It's not trying it once and saying, it didn't pan out, okay? So you have to stay committed over a long period of time. And a lot of these strategies came from a mega camp session where Gary Keller went and interviewed agents who were crushing it in different lead generation methods, okay? So we're going to go through 5 that I thought were really valuable and anybody can do. So if you're looking at different ways of really growing your database and providing more value and closing more transactions this year, you might want to ask yourself if you have enough lead generation methods activated in your business. Okay? Ask yourself the question, what lead generation methods do I have activated in my business today? If it's 1, you're going to run into a challenge. If it's 2, you're going to do better, but still going to run into a challenge. I would recommend having 3 to 4 consistent lead generation efforts that can build a solid pipeline of business for you. Okay? So this one is all about becoming the advisor for your sphere. So one thing that you want to do is you want to position yourself as the real estate economist or market expert of choice for your database. Okay? You also, one of the cool things that Troy Williams did, and he actually has 25% market share in his area. Okay, so 25% of the business or closings go through him, which is pretty crazy. Now, he's in a different size market than we are, but to still have that kind of market share is a strong reasoning behind his strategies working. Okay, so what Troy would do is he has this newsletter that goes out, and one of the things that he does is kind of an Ask Me Anything type section. And so he gets people to ask him questions consistently, or he'll just put answers in there. So he'll put, let's see, is it on here? So I know it might not be on this sheet. Oh, here it is. So ask Troy, where people can ask anything. So this is just a subsection on his email newsletter. And he'll put little questions, is now a good time to buy? Or how do I declutter before selling my house? And he'll just answer it. So he'll ask commonly asked questions, and then he'll provide a little answer, okay? And he's positioning in his client's mind that he is the expert that has the answers. But also what he says to do is he wants to become the Google for his entire small zip code. So if somebody says, well, where's the best plumber? He doesn't want them to go to Google to ask that. He wants them to come to Troy and say, Troy, who's the best plumber? Like, do you have that amount of trust? And do your clients actually think that you have those kind of relationships, right? And if not, start building that kind of expertise where clients realize that you are the one-stop shop for everything tied to their home, okay? That's a great strategic advantage for the long game. So making a list that of everyone that knows you and that you know and like, obviously putting them into your database, and then executing a 36 touch, but that little newsletter section might be a good one that you can add to your business. And feel free, if anybody has questions, remarks as we go through these, feel free to throw them out. And we can have a little conversation on these things. If somebody's doing this at a high level, please let us know as well. Number 2, so building a listing-based business from your sphere. Why are listings so valuable? Why is having a listing-based approach valuable? Yeah, Spencer. They bring buyers. Yep. So it brings additional buyers to your listings. What else? Yeah, Courtney.
Signs in the yard. There's more chance for people to nope. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So the more signs you have in the yards, the more opportunities people who are driving past, it's brand recognition for you, basically.
Increased visibility.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many of you top producers get sign calls?
Every once in a while.
Yeah.
But they can go to the sign and look at go to the website, and then it automatically captures their information. I do have that on there, and I have more of that probably than calls when they're inquiring.
Cool.
A smart sign. thing.
Yeah, so they're going directly to your website. Awesome. Instant lead capture. Cody.
It's mostly about freedom, right? Like buyers require me to be in a specific spot spending significant enough time. Listings, I can be wherever running my listing.
Leverage, ultimately, getting your time back. Yeah. There's a lot less energy output working with a listing than there is working with a buyer, right? So it definitely buys time. So this was Dan's approach. His team took 168 listings. 61% of their transactions came from listings. Ideally, you want to target for about 50-50. Okay, that's a pretty healthy business. Early on, it's a little skewed, and it might be like 80-20, but a goal could be to get your business to a 50-50 listing-based business. And the 4-point marketing plan that they deployed was quarterly calls to their entire sphere of influence. So one of the things that they said was a non-negotiable was making sure that they're calling their database at least once per quarter. Okay, and they have a very specific system that we'll get into in a second. Which, Josh, if you're okay with it, I want to call on you because I know you've talked about this, the D2 DTD2 system. I know you guys have looked at that and deployed it. The 4 client events, so they would do 1 client event per quarter was a part of their strategy. And then they also focused on just doing a 36 touch to their database. So emails, pop buys, sending cards in the mail, stuff like that. And then they had a PPC to buyer and seller. So they did pay per click. So they did some online lead generation as well, and had those running right to their website. But the specific system that's interesting is getting just systematic in your approach to your database. And this is a way to be able to kind of make sure that you are touching everybody. We have this weird thing, and I can't remember the name for it, built into a bias, basically built into our mind. Have you ever looked at a name in your phone book or in your database and said, I should call that person, but I don't want to because I haven't talked to them in a long while, or maybe they're just not somebody that you are very well connected to, so you don't know how they're going to receive the phone call, so you skip them, right? So this system actually helps you to get rid of that bias and do things where you're actually interacting with everybody that's in your phone book. Josh, do you guys still use that system, tagging system?
We used it for a while. Some of our agents still use it.
Okay.
We kind of switched from it.
Awesome.
But if you have no system, I think that's probably one of the best.
Yeah. And the structure is very simple. You're tagging people based off of their last name. And so you'd have A and W, for example, is the people you're going to approach in week 1. So everybody who their name ends with A or ends with a W is who you're going to be reaching out to. And this also allows you to know that you're not skipping maybe certain people in your database. Courtney, you had a thought? How do we run the mic?
I do something similar to this, but I also wanted to point out that you don't necessarily have to make a phone call for it to be a call. Like you can just start text conversations with people. And I've gotten many deals just by every day I pull up my text and I just go through my contacts starting with A, but one day's A, the next day's B or whatever, I do 10 texts a day where I just reach out to my database and I don't say anything about real estate. It's just, hey, how are you doing? I haven't talked to you in a while. What's up? And then they start replying, and sometimes, most of the time, it comes around to real estate.
Yeah.
And then you can do that on Facebook too.
Tell us more about that really quick. Facebook.
Yeah, so on Facebook, I do a similar thing, and I also follow the same kind of system with the D2. I don't know. What's the acronym?
DTD2.
DTD2, yeah. It's the same idea, but basically I go onto my social media and I do the same thing with the letters of the name, and I go, because the algorithms on Facebook, unless you're interacting with people, they're not going to see you. So I make a point to interact with people. So I go to my letters in my contacts, and I'll go to 10 people on Facebook, and I'll just scroll through their profile, and I'll comment on a bunch of different things, of their posts, and I'll like them. And then, and then for a few days at least, they're seeing my content on my page. So it just helps for your name to just be top of mind for them. And they remember, oh yeah, Courtney's in real estate. Even if I'm not even talking about real estate, I'm just, interacting and being an authentic friend, person, whatever, trying to be anyway.
Love it. Yes. And I know those on Zoom, unfortunately, won't hear you though. So, and I'll just say, hitting that home is the method actually doesn't matter as much as your consistency level. So if you're doing consistent text messages or consistent email or whatever, as long as you're staying consistent with it, it's going to work. So if you're not going to do phone calls, at least do something. Phone calls will have a better impact, but doing something is better than nothing for sure.
I watched a class on Facebook on how that works. Like Courtney was saying, the more you interact, even when you send them personal messages for their birthday, you make a comment. For each person you comment, it brings your stuff up 3 times as much on your feed for your people. So each comment that you make, it brings it up 3 times as more often than they would normally see it. So each comment, like a comment for, so even though I don't want to do it, I go through and I, make comments so they know I comment. I say happy birthday. You do the things, and then all of a sudden you start seeing your stuff coming through. It'll start telling you, and when you do I had to learn how to be smart enough to do this because I suck. But how to make it so it rolls across the top feed. I don't even know what it's called. Stories. See, there you go. Not my superpower. So on the stories and even on Instagram, I had my kids had to show me how to do it, but then it'll tell you this many people saw your story before, it disappeared in, 24 hours, and it really starts the engagement, and then people start engaging back. Oh my gosh, congratulations for this. Oh, your kids are cute, blah, 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 blah. Just I was getting private messages on my Instagram and my Facebook way more than I ever did that had nothing to do with the real estate. Just from me commenting to them was getting a lot more feedback. Yeah. So I'm with Courtney because I was like, oh, I hate doing this so much. But it works.
Awesome. That's great. Yeah, understanding how the algorithms work is a key, and it's just, again, it's a consistency. They reward it. Which, funny enough, that's the next one, your SOI on Facebook. And they actually have a specific strategy on here. So this was Sheena. And one of the things that they do is she focuses on 10 posts per week. I would say, again, something better than nothing. So don't get too hung up on the specific numbers. It's just, what are you going to stay consistent with? So if you're posting once a week or twice a week, that's going to be better than 0. So her focus is 10 posts per week. But here's where I think it's important. And then she's also adding 7 new friends. The engagement that Natalie and Courtney were just talking about, I think, is really the driver here. Okay. So her focus was engaging with at least 75 people per week. Okay. And I don't know the exact stat, but it's actually shockingly low on how many people Facebook actually will show your content to. So a lot of the people in your friends, if you have 1,000 friends or 5,000 friends, whatever it is, a very small majority, I think it's like below 10%, actually see your content organically. So the way to increase that is by engaging on their content. Okay, Facebook will start to show your content to them more often. So that engagement strategy is something to stay to look at. And let's see. So they focused on comments on posts in addition to reacting. So and then comment sincerely with interest, send Facebook messages or DMs, and interacting with people that they're connected to. So that was their approach. And again, this is where it adds up, the compounding effect of what happens over the course of a year when you stay committed to those kind of efforts. 3,900 engaged interactions. Okay. And this was 12 to 24 deals a week, or a year, excuse me. This one is the simple golden letters, okay? And this one you can do either farming, so it's people you don't know, or you can do your sphere of influence, so you can actually target your SOI. So on the right-hand side, this was a 22-year-old who closed 26 listings from farming, okay? So he was sending these letters to people he did not know. And I know the text is a little hard to see, so in the email, you'll be able to see it a little bit better when it's close up. But he gives his specific script on what he actually would send to people. And then on the left-hand side is one that we went through in the Uncommon Bootcamp, which is one we created here at KW for you. And that is just simply a market update. So think of what you would send email-wise to your clients as far as a market update. You should think about at least once a quarter sending a paper copy of your market update. So here's how many homes sold, here's where interest rates are right now, median sales price, and then have a way, a MOFR, right, call to action of see your home value right now. And they can scan a QR code to get their home valuation. Okay. So some people may not look at emails, they may send it to junk, whatever the case may be. And so making sure that they do see it at least once a quarter on a paper copy might be a helpful approach. Okay. And then lastly is seminars. Now this one obviously is showcasing a first-time homebuyer seminar, but you can do anything. You can do investors, you can do retirees, you can do seller seminars. So you can get very focused on a specific group if you'd like. But the playbook is what's important. And so this is a shorthand version of the playbook of what to do, but we have a full one that's like 25 pages and tells you step by step. How do you set the event right up? What do you post on Facebook? Who do you send, email-wise, what do you send to your database? So it has that step-by-step guide. But ultimately, it's just getting your people into a room, whether it be 10 people or 20 people, and educating them to, again, position yourself as a market expert. Okay. So those are 5 things that you can do. If you're not doing any of them, I'd suggest trying one of them. Don't try to do everything at once, but try to implement one new strategy to start building your pipeline. Again, with interest rates coming down, it's the best time to start reigniting conversations, especially with buyers who may have been on the fence last year. You need to go back through your list and say, who did I have a conversation with in the last year or 18 months that were worried about interest rates and re-spark those conversations. Okay. Cool. Any thoughts or questions before we wrap up? Awesome. Jeanette, thanks for lunch and enjoy. Have a great week.